In the dead of night, when the world is silent, your mind speaks the loudest. Overthinking gnaws at your peace, pulling you into an endless abyss of uncertainty. What if I told you that there's a way to break free from this torment, a way to silence the storm, a way to seize control of your thoughts and your life? What if I told you that the ancient wisdom of Stoicism holds the key to not just overcoming overthinking, but mastering your inner world entirely? Imagine, for a moment, standing on the precipice of your fears, your doubts, your uncertainties, all those chaotic thoughts that haunt you. You feel the weight of them pressing down, suffocating you, but you refuse to yield. You stand tall, unshaken, because you have one secret. You understand the nature of your mind, the Stoic secret, the path to emotional resilience and inner peace. In the next few minutes, I will reveal that secret to you. This ancient wisdom is not a luxury reserved for philosophers of the past. It is a weapon, a tool you can wield to reclaim control over your mind. But be warned, once you understand this secret, nothing in your life will ever be the same. The road ahead is not for the faint-hearted. It requires strength, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to self-mastery. Are you ready to embrace this challenge? Let's begin our journey. Overthinking is not a random affliction. It is a sign, a signal that something deeper is at play. But the Stoics have something to say about it. They knew that this relentless mental chatter is the result of a mind untamed, a mind that has not learned to distinguish between what is in our control and what is not. And once you learn this lesson, you will never fall prey to overthinking again. Before we dive into this, subscribe to the channel and stay with me until the end. The truth I will share with you today is just the beginning of your transformation. In the next video, we will dive even deeper, revealing how Stoicism can guide you through the most difficult and confusing moments of life. Don't miss it. The nature of overthinking. Overthinking. It starts with a single thought, a fleeting worry that something might go wrong, and it spirals. Before you know it, you are overwhelmed with a flood of possibilities, regrets, and what-ifs. You question everything. Is this the right decision? What if I fail? What if people are judging me? These thoughts become like chains, shackling your mind, preventing you from acting, from moving forward. But here's the brutal truth. Overthinking is the silent assassin of action, the thief of clarity, and it is a battle you must win. The Stoics understood this all too well. They lived in a world that was as chaotic and unpredictable as ours. Yet, while most people are paralyzed by doubt, the Stoics were able to remain steadfast, unmoved by the turbulence of life. Why? Because they understood a simple but powerful principle. The mind must be trained to distinguish between what is in our control and what is not. Overthinking arises when we confuse these boundaries. We attempt to control the uncontrollable, and in doing so, we exhaust ourselves. We wear ourselves thin trying to predict every outcome, manage every risk, and control every variable. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What he's telling us is that our thoughts are ours to command. We may not control the world around us, but we control how we interpret it. The moment you accept this truth, you take the first step toward ending the cycle of overthinking. Seneca, another Stoic sage, once warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This statement is a stark reminder that much of our suffering is self-inflicted. We allow our minds to wander down paths of worst-case scenarios, only to realize later that none of those imagined disasters ever came to pass. By overthinking, we multiply our fears and anxieties as though we're rehearsing a tragedy that is never destined to unfold. The Stoic path calls us to stop this madness, to remain grounded in the present, and to take action based on reason, not fear. Epictetus, the great Stoic teacher, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the essence of the Stoic mindset. Overthinking is a reaction, a response to uncertainty and fear. But the Stoic does not allow themselves to be a slave to their reactions. Instead, they embrace the idea that their power lies not in the external events, but in their responses to those events. They choose not to be swept away by the tide of thoughts and emotions. They choose clarity. They choose action. And now you stand at a crossroads. You've been given a glimpse of the secret, but the real challenge begins here. Will you continue to allow your thoughts to overwhelm you, or will you choose to master them? Will you allow the storm of overthinking to dictate your life, or will you stand firm, unshaken, with the Stoic understanding that your mind is yours to control? This is where your transformation begins. The power of self-control. Now that we've uncovered the root of overthinking, it's time to turn our attention to the solution. The answer lies in one simple yet profound word: self-control. But what does true self-control look like? In a world that constantly pulls us in every direction, how can we find the strength to remain calm and centered? Self-control, from the Stoic perspective, is not about suppressing or denying our emotions. It's not about pretending that we don't feel fear, anger, or frustration. It's about acknowledging those emotions and choosing not to be controlled by them. The Stoic mind is not a void devoid of emotion. It is a space where emotions are acknowledged, understood, and then set aside in favor of rational thought and virtuous action. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the Stoic approach to obstacles and challenges. Overthinking is an obstacle, a force that stands in the way of clear thinking and decisive action. But rather than being paralyzed by this obstacle, the Stoic sees it as an opportunity to practice control, to rise above the turmoil of the mind. In this way, the very thing that once held us captive becomes the catalyst for growth. When we are caught in a cycle of overthinking, it's because we are letting our emotions dictate our thoughts. We worry about outcomes. We fear judgment. We are paralyzed by the weight of what might happen. But through the practice of self-control, we learn to shift our focus. Instead of obsessing over what might go wrong, we focus on what we can control: our actions, our responses, and our inner state. This shift in focus allows us to regain clarity and peace of mind. The Stoics practiced what they called apatheia, a state of being where they were no longer controlled by their passions. This doesn't mean that they didn't feel emotions. It means they learned to observe them without reacting impulsively. They allowed themselves to feel anger, but they didn't let it cloud their judgment. They allowed themselves to feel fear, but they didn't let it paralyze them. In doing so, they gained mastery over their thoughts, their actions, and ultimately, their lives. Building resilience. When fear arises, as it inevitably does, the Stoic response is not to retreat or shrink from it. Fear is not something to fight or suppress, for in fighting it, we give it the power it does not deserve. Instead, the Stoic meets fear with courage, not the courage of brashness or recklessness, but the courage of understanding and acceptance. We acknowledge fear, but we do not let it control our actions. We confront it, knowing that fear is simply a story we tell ourselves about a future that may never come to pass. This brings us to one of the most essential principles of Stoic thought: preparing for adversity. The Stoics believed in an exercise called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's an ancient technique where, instead of avoiding the worst-case scenario, we prepare for it. We mentally rehearse the loss of our possessions, our health, and even our loved ones. But this exercise is not about living in pessimism. It's about freeing ourselves from the fear of loss by accepting that loss is inevitable. This mental preparation removes the sting of fear because we are no longer blindsided by what may come. This practice allows us to face the unknown with calmness, not because we want misfortune, but because we know that we have the resilience to face it. The Stoic mindset transforms fear from a paralyzing force into a source of strength. When we understand that our response to fear is the only thing within our control, we shift our focus from the fear itself to our actions. We begin to understand that in any situation, we can act with reason and virtue. We can choose how to respond, even in the face of disaster. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It grows in the shadows of our minds when we do not shine the light of reason upon it. The Stoics used their minds as a sword, cutting through the fog of anxiety and apprehension. They didn't wait for fear to pass. Instead, they acted despite it. They embraced the discomfort that fear brought, knowing that true growth comes when we push through the resistance it creates. As Seneca wisely said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." When we stand firm in the face of fear, when we choose to act in the midst of uncertainty, we build resilience. This resilience becomes our shield, protecting us from the endless cycle of overthinking. When fear arises, we meet it with a clear, steady mind, knowing that we have the power to choose our response. We are no longer victims of our emotions. We are the masters of them.